Everybody, welcome to Be My Guest, episode 3. Can you believe we've made it to 3 episodes so far? It's moving real fast. We're getting a lot of great content, so I really hope you're enjoying it. Again, just a little refresh in case you are not familiar with our format. If this is your first episode you've ever heard, we are really out here to tell some hotel stories, right? Talking about being similar to Humans of New York, where we're just telling some real life stories. And as you can see, real life story wise, my hair got a little messed up there as I was getting this show ready. So trying a new look for me through COVID. But anyway, we have a great guest today. You may know him without even knowing that you know him, because if you've ever seen the amazing Instagram accounts or social media accounts, Rev Parblums, RevPar Travel, RevPar Growth, Midlife Crisis Podcast, RevPar Media, a lot of stuff that Calvin has done. He kind of did behind the scenes, and we're going to talk about why. But if you like those accounts, if you haven't seen those accounts, make sure you check them out. But if you do like them, do know of them, well, Calvin's the guy you've been in touch with, and you may not have even realized it. So he's done some really great things in that social media spectrum. But through that time, similar to our last guest, Sarah Dandashi, he was still working in hotels. And like many of us, including myself, during COVID, he unfortunately lost his position. But he used that time, or is using that time, since we're still in the middle of it, to really launch his new product. And I want to talk about that mindset. You know, we talked again to Sarah about what went into her mindset. Well, now Calvin's going to bring us his. So without further ado, let's bring in Rev Parblums himself, Mr. Calvin Tilokee. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, man. How you doing?
Oh, great. Thanks so much for taking the time to join me today.
Absolutely.
Again, appreciate you being
a
guest. Yeah, I mean, you are, again, a great person to talk to, because you were on a lot of different sides of this, right? You have your social media accounts and your social media business. You were still working in hotels, leading revenue for a hotel. And like myself, as a revenue manager, we both, when there was no more revenue to lead, got released. So,
yeah,
it's a very stressful time, especially because both of us have put a lot of time into this industry. You more than myself to this point. But let's just start off. Give me kind of a quick rundown of your background, how you got into hotels, and really where you were looking to go through all that.
Sure. I mean, I've been in the industry close to 20 years, which I'm definitely dating myself here. But I went to school for hospitality. Actually, I should back up. I went to school as a biology major because my dad is in the dental field. He's a dental technician, so he's the guy that would physically make like your veneers or your bridges or something like that, right? And all I really knew coming out of high school was that, and I was good at science, and I figured, hey, this is what I'm going to do. I'll be a dentist. And then I get to college, and I got my ass handed to me by organic chemistry, and I said, yeah, this is tough. I don't know if I can do this. And simultaneously, I had a lot of friends that were in the hotel restaurant management school. And I went to a small school, University of Maryland, Eastern Shore, down in rural Maryland. Anybody who's been out to Ocean City, it's on that side of Maryland, so on the other side of the bay. And it's not a very big school, but you know what? It did have a really good hospitality program. We had a small hotel on campus, and we did a few student-run events throughout the year. And just hearing them talk about that for the first year and a half, I was like, hey, you know what? This sounds like something I'd be interested in. I mean, I've been traveling my whole life. My family's from the Caribbean, and I've done a lot of traveling. I was always interested in travel, in hospitality, and it seemed like a good fit. And the fact that you could kind of do on-the-job training, so to speak. So you could go from class, and we worked at the hotel. We did housekeeping, and we did purchasing and F&B and service. We did all that stuff throughout the curriculum. So I like that kind of on-the-job training to be able to apply to a real-life situation immediately.
Yeah, I mean, there's really, only so much experience you can get from bookwork, right? You can certainly learn the concepts, learn the math and the formulas behind it. But especially in hotels, as you know, as I know, there's no type of education you can get that's not on property, dealing with so many unique scenarios, and sometimes all at once, right?
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
so it's great that your school had that. It's great
Hmm.
that you kind of figured that path out prior to leaving school, because there's plenty of us,
Yeah.
like myself again, who has gone through
Yeah.
school with no intention of being in the industry, kind of fell into it by accident. And obviously, we're
Yeah.
still here because I fell in love with it as well. But
Hmm.
um, so that kind of gives you another layer to this kind of whole COVID story, because this was something
Hmm.
you really intended to do coming out of school, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. This is something I pursued. I mean, I love the industry. I think it's just kind of, I had a VP throughout the course of my career who said, people either have the spirit to serve or they don't, and I believe I do. And I think, those of us that have the best careers in this industry are those people that have that spirit to serve. You want to please people, and you like to host, and you like to put a smile on people's face.
So, Calvin, you're 100% right there, right? You can't really be in the hospitality industry without having that spirit. And anybody who's worked with Marriott corporate properties, or even maybe even Marriott franchise, there's the Spirit to Serve award, right? Along that same
Hmm.
lines, where you get recognized for being an outstanding service act, whatever it may be. And that comes straight from headquarters. So, Calvin, you talking about really having that open and engaging mindset, being that spirit to serve, and you certainly found yourself in the role that quantifies that or exuberates that the most:
Hmm.
revenue management.
Yeah.
Because nothing says spirit to serve and front facing guests like a revenue manager. Am I
Yeah.
correct, other RMs? We are the number one people
The
for
heart and soul of
guest
the hotel.
relations is revenue management. So I want to go back to your whole career, but how did you
Yeah.
find your way into revenue?
Well, while I was in college, the last year before I graduated, I did what you'd call an internship, but just basically working at a hotel. And I worked at the front desk. And when I graduated in December because of switching my major. So I had to spend a little extra time. Um, when I got out of school, they were hiring for a reservations manager, which I was able to get. And from there, I reported directly to the director of revenue management. And funny enough, at that point, working with him, I actually said revenue is the one thing I don't want to do, because this guy was miserable all the time, all the time. And you know what? Fast forward a decade, I was like, I get it. I get it. I could see why he was stressed all the time, But he was miserable. I'm like, I don't want that job. That doesn't look like a fun role. But at the same time, I did learn a lot. And he wasn't a good teacher, but he was somebody who, because he was miserable dealing with whatever he dealt with, he threw a lot of stuff at me and just said, hey, do this, do this.
Mhm.
So the property I worked at, we had a sister property that was about half the size. So he just kind of threw that at me and said, hey, forecast this hotel. I don't want to be bothered.
Mhm.
And that's how I learned to forecast. And I learned a lot of things. And I took a quick deviation out of the industry, well, out of hotels, still in the industry, but I went into restaurants after that. After spending a few years in that position and not knowing what I wanted to do next, I worked with Gordon Ramsay, opening his first restaurant here in the U.S., which is in New York City.
Mhm.
Did that, and I realized I'm not an F&B guy. Even though I was doing reservations, they expected you to stay through the first service, and I was
Mhm.
pulling 14, 16-hour days, and I'm like, I didn't sign up for this. So I got back into hotels, and my next director of revenue was a lot more of a teacher, and she had a much different personality, and I realized it wasn't driven by the job, it's driven by how you handle it. Again, I'm young. I was like 20 years old, 21 when I came out of school. So you don't realize that at the time, I didn't realize that, hey, two different people can take the same situation, the same position, and handle it completely differently. And
Absolutely.
she was a lot more centered, a lot calmer, and much more of a teacher. And she started to actually teach me revenue. And I realized that I enjoyed it. I had aptitude for it. And the way she described it to me was, there's all these puzzle pieces, and you're trying to put them together the best way that's going to be profitable for the property. And
Yeah.
I've never been a math person, but I am a strategic person, and I gravitated towards the strategic part of revenue management. And her putting it that way to me was like a light bulb moment, and I really just grabbed it and was able to move on from there. I my next position after that was a revenue manager for two properties in Brooklyn, two IHG properties. And then I moved into a bigger property in Times Square, again, as kind of a reservations manager slash analyst, but it was a much bigger property and got me into Times Square, and then from there, I became a director of revenue at a Marriott property and moved up from there. I stayed with the same company, but I bounced around a lot, which was probably the best situation you could be in, a company that's constantly growing, but you can jump around, but you're still within the same company. So I
Right.
went from there. I went back into the city on the Upper East Side, and then I worked at a water park resort with them. They sent me to LA for a while. I came back and worked at a 5-star boutique. So I got a lot of different experience with that same company, all as a director of revenue. So that's my revenue story in a nutshell.
No, and it's a great story. It shows a lot. And again, revenue is still a fairly young discipline in the
It
industry,
is.
right? It's probably only
It
what,
is.
30, 35 years old-ish.
Yeah. I
So
mean, we didn't have revenue management courses when I was in school.
yeah.
And this is a topic I brought up on Ref Problems pretty recently, because I've seen people recently talking about the value of hospitality school. And to me, it'd be silly to, if this is an industry you want to be in, why wouldn't you study it?
Mhm.
Just it doesn't make sense. People are out there talking about, oh, it's a waste of time because you can just jump right in and get the experience, but it's only going to take you so far. Let me put it this way: if you wanted to be an engineer, nobody would tell you just go get a job at a factory and figure it out, right? I mean, that's silly.
Absolutely.
It's a degree in learning the industry that you want to be in is crucial. Once you get in the door, then it's all experience, but having a degree from a hospitality school can get you in the door, and it's going to get you in the door at a much higher level
Mhm.
than somebody who doesn't. And that's just a fact of the matter. But once you're in there, it's up to you.
I mean, I have personal stories about that, right?
Yeah.
So again, I did my undergrad as a communications major. I was going to go into broadcast and TV, radios, things like
Hmm.
that. And coming out of the recession of '08, it didn't materialize. So I got into hotels essentially out of necessity, like I said. But as I'm there, I'm really enjoying it, right? And I'm
Hmm.
someone I want to kind of immerse myself in that culture. So about my second year into hotels, I went back for a master's in hospitality administration. And
Hmm.
a lot of people that I spoke to saying, hey, should I do it? Should I not? They said, no. They're like, don't do it. The experience is what matters. It's not really worth the money. But I said, you know what? Forget it. I still want to do it because I want to kind of rapidly progress my career. I want to learn these different things as fast as I can. So I
Hmm.
did it. It took me about 2 years. And honestly, the school wasn't even that difficult, not because the courses weren't that difficult, but because I was doing a lot of that stuff already. So I was able to kind of
Right.
parlay
Exactly.
that and connect what I was learning in the
Connect the dots.
courses to my actual work, right?
Exactly.
Fast forward a couple years, I'm applying for jobs, and I can tell you right now, on at least two different occasions, I'm not saying I got the job for that reason, but it was actually specifically brought
Hmm.
up during the interviews. Wow, you have a master's from this particular school. That's pretty
Hmm.
impressive.
Hmm.
So I certainly did not get the job because of that, but it stood out, right? It,
Of
it
course.
gave me that little extra edge, and it was directly fed back to me by the owner of a company,
Hmm.
by the senior VP of the department I was working for at another company. So again, I'm not going to say you have to do it, as Calvin
Hmm.
said, but there's definitely value there,
Absolutely.
even more than just the education itself. It does stand out. You make network
Absolutely.
connections. I'm still heavily involved with that alumni network.
Exactly.
So, um,
So
listen,
yeah, a lot of that stuff is immeasurable. Like
yeah,
you just hit it on the head with those, those connections that you can make, and the friends you'll keep throughout your whole career. And especially now, I know we're going to go into it and have the conversation about COVID and the impact and things like that. I mean, both of us have been furloughed from positions, and when it's time to get back in there, when things do start to turn around, you think if you thought the competitive landscape was tight before, what do you think is going to look like now? And if you don't, there's going to be really easy to just brush people aside who don't have degrees. I mean,
yeah.
if everything else being equal, this person who has a degree and has shown an interest in the industry and has some experience and knowledge is going to be over the other person. Period. End of story.
Yeah, and I mean, again, everyone's situation is different, so maybe you can't get a degree, maybe time doesn't allow it. Who knows? But there is
Hmm.
a way to get your courses done. My program that I did, you can complete it within a year. You can do it
Hmm.
in as fast as a year, or as slow as 10 years. Right? I mean, it
Right.
wasn't exactly where I know I did it in two, just because I was able to, but that's not how it has to happen.
Hmm.
And as you said, the job market's getting very, very competitive. It's not like it was back in January where there was a million open positions.
Yep.
Positions are tight. A lot of positions aren't going to be coming back for a pretty long time, if ever.
Hmm.
So yeah, if you have that ability, and listen, you could potentially use this time again. If everyone's financial situation is different, everyone's time situation is
Absolutely.
different.
Yeah.
But if you have the time right now, while this is all happening, this is a great time to do it. This is an
Hmm.
opportune time to dedicate yourself to that education, so that you do come back out stronger, as Calvin said. But you're talking about being in the industry for 20 years, and you
Hmm.
certainly made tremendous growth within that field of revenue, but also within hotels themselves. For many people in the industry that have been in the industry 15, 20, 25 years, I mean, I've only been in it for 7, but
Hmm.
it still feels like I've dedicated a lot of myself through the courses, through the extra work I've done, through all these different things that I've helped achieve what I've achieved.
Hmm.
To see the state of the industry as it currently is for someone who's been in it for so long, just how does that make you feel? What is the kind of how does it impact your mental mindset?
It's it's hard to put it into just a couple of words. I mean, the first word that crossed my mind was scary. It's obvious to say I've never seen anything remotely like this. I wasn't quite in the workforce yet when 9/11 hit. And just speaking to people who were, and some of my former VPs and things like that, that was about the closest comparison you had to something like this a couple of months in. But this obviously never been anything like this, and the scary part about it is no one knows when this is turning around. um we did
All
everything
we
we
know
did
is
was
it's not soon from where we're
no,
currently
not
sitting.
soon, right? Obviously, more than half of our job was forecasting and projections, and I couldn't give you a clue at this point.
Start through.
And anybody who says they can is probably the only people who could is they're working for Star. That's about it.
If anybody could forecast what's going to happen over the next 12 months accurately,
Hmm.
they'd be making a lot more money than they're making in hotels. Let's call it what it
Exactly.
is.
Exactly. I used to say that to my GMs all the time when they would complain about my forecast. Like, oh, well, you said we were going to do this. I was like, listen, if I was that accurate, do you think I'd be working here?
Especially, I mean, again, even just call it back 5 years ago, where the booking windows got shorter,
Yeah.
booking patterns changed, booking channels changed, and
Mhm.
everything became a lot more complicated to accurately forecast. Well, now
Yep.
the booking window is a day, right? And I mean,
Yeah.
and you have no idea where it's coming from. You have
Same
no
day
idea who it's
sometimes.
going to
Yeah.
be at what rate. So it's
Nope.
almost a dart throw. I mean, I get there's certain standards that have to be completed, but if you're someone who's still working and your forecast accuracy is terrible right
Hmm.
now, or you're really struggling for that to just even get it done where it makes a semblance of sense to your upper level team, you're not alone. Okay.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Forecasting stressed me out in the good times, because
Yeah.
you obviously want to be as accurate as you can. And
Hmm.
it all comes down to an educated guess. There's no education right now, as you just said.
Exactly.
So
It's an unprecedented landscape. You have no historicals to look at to compare this to anything else. And that's what it's all about. I mean, the first step in really forecasting is looking at what you did same time last year,
mhm,
whether or not there was an event and these kind of things and shifts and all of that type of stuff. But you're looking at something else to make a comparison and make an educated guess as to what you think will happen this time around based on current, trends. We have nothing to compare this to unless you were alive in 1908 for the Spanish flu or whatever that was. You know,
or
that's
you're or you're John Connor who came back in time.
right, right. Let's go hit some of those people up and see what they think. But you have nothing. So again, those of you who are dealing with it, don't beat yourself up. And don't let your GM beat you up either.
That's what I was going to say. So for people that are dealing with it, and you've been in the forecasting business for a long time,
Hmm.
and there's obviously a lot of pressure in that role to be accurate, because it's not just your top line that's getting budgeted, but or
Yeah.
forecasted, but you're also, flowing your
Mhm.
expenses, flowing your schedules, flowing a lot of things down to the bottom based on
Everything.
those
Yep.
numbers.
Absolutely.
So, what would you tell someone, whether they're a young revenue manager or someone who's been in the business for a while and is really struggling with that challenge? What would you kind of want to let them know, or tell them if you had a chance to speak to them?
That's a great question, and it reminds me of my my good dorm. I'll call her that. The one who really started to teach me. Another thing she said that really stuck with me. She said, "If we don't do our jobs properly, people lose theirs."
Hmm.
And it always stuck with me, and I took it personally when the few occasions I was at a property where we'd have to lay someone off, or because of we're not hitting budget, or downward trends and things like that, because that's our job as the revenue people in cohesion with the sales team, is to find enough business and find enough revenue to keep the lights on, to keep make sure we're hitting our goals and make sure people stay employed. So I don't say that to scare anyone, but understand the gravity and the responsibility that you do have.
Yeah, absolutely. So, uh, kind of going back to now, we've kind of caught up to March, and
Hmm.
you're doing your side stuff with Instagram and social media, but your
Hmm.
main role is still director of revenue in Manhattan.
Right.
And at the time, well, I guess going into March, let me ask you, did you have any intentions of breaking out of that role, and kind of moving towards that social media side? Or at the time when things were going well, was your mindset still going to be in that path for a while?
Yeah, well, I did. It was a longer term plan than 2 months for sure. But over the last couple of years, I did develop some clients on the side that I was working with on the social media, and where I really identified an opportunity in the market was my last couple of hotels that were trying to be active on social media, and they worked with different agencies and stuff. And I just saw that you had two problems. You had the issue of the social media agency not understanding hotels and not understanding the business, and then also just kind of ticking boxes for social, like, okay, we're going to post 3 times a week and we do this, but because there's no understanding of the actual business, there's no creativity
Cookie,
either.
cookie cutters.
Yeah, it was very cookie cutter, and I felt that there's a lot of creativity missing. One of the properties I worked at, it was very historic. It was an old building that was refurbished from the 20s. It was a woman's factory, and it was run and managed by women. I mean, this is a great story to tell,
Yeah.
and nothing on that social media presence would tell you anything about that. You wouldn't know it. And it was just, to me, that's a huge lost opportunity, and that's money down the toilet, because your social media needs to be your hotel's resume in a sense, but it's very different from your website or anything else that you put out there, because people almost expect that to be sterile. To an extent, they go to your website, they know they're going to see your rooms, you'll have some very pretty pictures, things like that, but people like to feel like they're getting a little bit behind the curtain. And that's the good thing about social media, is you can be more authentic.
Yeah.
Put pictures of your team. What last year I gave them an idea about. Remember last year, everybody was putting up the Spotify playlist at the end of the year.
Yeah.
Something like that. Hey, here's our director of sales. This is his or her Spotify playlist this year. What do you think? And people can vote and stuff. And that's where you can do different things like that on social, where people are going to have get a bit more of that personality of your hotel. And that's the good thing, and that's where I think a lot of these agencies miss the boat. And the fact that I understand the business and have worked in it for 20 years, I was like, okay, this is an opportunity for me. So the plan was maybe a year or two down the road to keep building up these clients and then be able to do it full time. And then COVID came along and said, no, you're doing it now. So um,
Well, that goes into my next question.
yeah.
So I want to kind of separate Calvin, the revenue manager, from Calvin,
Hmm.
the social media entrepreneur, for a
Hmm.
second.
Sure.
January 2020, New
Hmm.
York City is rocking. Hotels are having unbelievable
Yeah.
success for Q1, probably better than they've ever seen, or certainly up there. You're probably feeling really good. I was feeling really good. March comes and
Hmm.
everything starts to fall apart, right? So now you're stressed, I'm stressed, and we're trying to grasp anything that we can to just hold on to any little bit that we can. But
Hmm.
once it kind of becomes like obvious that that's not going to happen,
Hmm.
and the layoffs and the furloughs start to come, and then you get called into the office or you get the call on the phone or however it happened, what was going through your mind when your 20 plus year career was now came up to this moment that you are essentially going to lose your position and it was by no fault of your own?
Well, the first thought was I was disappointed, obviously, to lose a position. But to your point about coming into this year, I was motivated. I was ready to go. I had joined the property that I was at after Q1 or like early Q2 of 2019. So it takes a few months to ramp up on any property. I don't care how long you've been doing this. Every hotel has its own personality, and it's going to take you probably 3 to 6 months to fully grasp how to manage, how to price, how that hotel performs. So any of you out there who are in that position, don't feel bad if you don't have it. The first 2 months, it's going to take up to 6 months for you to really have an understanding. So I did that, and I kind of felt like we didn't hit our goals in 2019. We outperformed our market. We grew on Star, but we didn't hit budget. So that was I had presented the budget for that hotel. So January comes along, and I'm like, I'm ready to go. I'm like, okay, this year I've got enough time under my belt now. We're knocking this out, and we get to March and things just start to happen. And at first, it's like, well, who knows how long this is going to last? You hear this rumor about the virus in China, and then you're looking at, okay, how is this impacting my international business? How is this?
Mhm,
That hotel actually did quite a bit of business from China.
mhm.
So it was, you're looking more micro that way, not thinking this is coming here and this is going to completely do here what it did there, if
Right.
not worse at this point. Who knows? But, um, so that was the initial thought. It was just like, man, I'm not going to get it. I'm not going to get to finish the job here. We're not going to hit that budget by any means or standards.
Yeah.
But I have, this is not the first time I've been in the position. I've told the story before. In between my reservation, I'm sorry, my reservations and revenue path, I was laid off. As a reservations manager, I was working for an IHG property, and this is around the time when hotels were going to centralized reservations offices. So they were
Yeah.
getting rid of all that on property. So my whole department was just ceased to exist. So that was one layoff, and then I went to another company where I did actually get a promotion. I moved up from reservations to revenue manager, and I was doing a pre-opening hotel in the city. The company lost funding on that project, laid off again. And then a couple of weeks after that, the same company called me back because they had an opportunity at those two Holiday Inn Express hotels that I mentioned. And so I got that. And then right after my 30th birthday, I got laid off again. They eliminated that position because they were going to centralize revenue management now.
Mhm.
So that was three layoffs in 1 year. Um, and I spent a bit of time out of work after that. And you really just got to fight like a dog to get back in it. So the actual layoff furlough, that didn't affect me really because I'd already been there, and it was kind of like, it wasn't the first time I've had that phone call. Obviously, it was the fourth time I had that phone call.
Right, right.
So I took a couple of days because that never feels good. And I mean, I'm not going to sit there and lie about it. I mean, I don't want to give anybody that impression. It never feels good. That your employment is coming, and most importantly, those paychecks ain't coming for a while. But I took 2 days or so, and I said, you know what, I've wanted to get this business started, and what would have prevented me from getting it started sooner would be time, because it'd
Right.
be okay. I'd have to do this at night after work on the weekends and burn the candle at both ends. Now I have nothing but time.
So
So
we'll get to that part in one sec. But
Mhm.
for someone who unfortunately has been laid off several times,
Mhm.
what is some of the advice you would give someone who's facing this for the first time? And granted, I'm sure many people have been facing it for several months now, but
Yeah.
if this is
Yeah.
your first time ever getting laid off and first time ever kind of experiencing this, it's, obviously it comes across as very personal, even though, especially in this scenario, it's not.
Hmm. Hmm.
What's some of the advice that you would give them from, unfortunately, the experience you've had?
Yeah. Um, this is a good time to reassess. And I think a lot of times when you're in this position, you're wondering if you're in the right industry. And I'm sure plenty of people think about that now with travel and hospitality, because we've been hit probably the hardest of most industries out there. Um, but this is a good time to assess your skills. And I had a conversation with someone a couple months ago about this, wondering if they could do a different type of job. And I think you may not give yourself enough credit as to the skills you've developed um, in the industry that can cross over. For us as hoteliers, I think, quite frankly, we're probably some of the toughest people on the planet. I mean, to
Easily.
sit there and deal with the public every day, and a lot of days are the same, but they're not really the same. Like there's always going to be that person coming to the desk with a complaint. What that complaint's going to be will shock you, because sometimes it's, you realize, how did that cross your mind to complain about, but that's coming. And I think a lot of the skills that we develop in the industry of being able to remain calm under pressure, and deal with stress, and deal with a lot of change, these are things that really need to sit down, look at your experience, and just map that out and see where else that can apply. And I know that there are companies out there that are looking for hospitality people for those reasons, because we have such a unique skill set of what we deal with, that it's very translatable and very beneficial in a lot of roles. There are a lot of people out there that can't do what we do.
No, I think hospitality skills are so transferable. I mean,
Absolutely.
the soft skills, especially, you mentioned some of them.
Yeah.
Adaptability is one that comes to my mind.
Hmm.
Um, but that kind of goes along to what you've done, right? And again, we had Sarah on our last episode, and she has Ask a Concierge,
Hmm.
which, similar to RevPar Media, you guys are both doing on, I won't say the side, but doing as in lieu or in side by side with your hotel job.
Hmm.
Your hotel jobs unfortunately get lost because of COVID. And as you
Hmm.
said, to open the show, that rapidly speeds up your timeline
Yeah.
of going into this full time. So how did you go about mentally processing, one, I lost my job, my consistent stream of income, something I've been working on for a long time,
Hmm.
to, okay, yeah, this sucks, but I'm going to now take this time to really ramp up and drive that timeline in 2 weeks versus 2 years, maybe.
Right, exactly. I mean, I think, and something that we've talked about on our growth account, is this is unprecedented times, and don't let anybody tell you that it's going to be easy. So it's day to day. Sometimes it's hour to hour, right? And you know what? I felt like crap. When you get that call, and you wonder now, okay, you know those paychecks aren't coming, and who knows who's going to be hiring again. And I had to take a day or two to just kind of be in that funk, to be upset, to sit on the couch and eat chocolate and watch TV or whatever it is that just kind of made me feel better. But I took a day or two, and I said, well, I'm not going to spend the rest of my life like this, right? You got to do something. And you have a skill set, you have something that you've been working on. And for me, the vision was very clear, that I knew I was going to have an agency that would work with hotels and other companies. Obviously it was hotels initially, because that's what I know, and that will certainly be there. But the opportunity that this presented is for me to kind of branch out of that also, because I don't want to be pigeonholed, number one, as somebody who could only do social media for hotels. Because I think once you have the social media skill set of content creation, and I think the skills as we have as revenue managers is that market analysis. That's no different, like a channel, knowing what channel your money is coming through
Mhm.
is the same as knowing what your audience is reacting to, right?
Yeah,
It's
totally.
figuring out that content, who likes it, when do they like it, when do I post this, um, and hitting things at the right time. Some of my favorite memes to make are the ones that are timely, that are current events.
Right.
So that skill set of knowing that is, like we talked about being translatable. So if I could do it for hotels, I could do it for other companies. So right now I have a portfolio. I have hotels. I have revenue management companies. I have people that are selling products. People that make honey. In their spare time. And what I focus on is trying to find unique stories, because I think, going back to what I was saying earlier about that particular hotel with a unique history, things that are fun and things that are different, and that's and how to promote that. So yeah, like I said, I took 2 days. I moped, I was upset, I cursed people out, and then I said, all right, what are you going to do now? You got that out of your system. So yeah, I just hit it hard and did all the things that probably would have taken a year, 6 months at minimum to do, like form the LLC and file all that paperwork and set up your accounts and just really hit the ground and start, cold calling people and prospecting and all of that stuff. These are things that would have taken a much longer time. Now it was, hey, I have all day to do this.
And that brings up a great point, right? That to take that time to really kind of reflect on what's happening, right? I've seen a lot of stuff, and maybe I've even been guilty of this myself, both from a personal level and certainly in talking to people, of you got to use this time to grow. You got to use this time to better yourself. And that's true. But you also have to take some time and just sit on the couch and eat a tube of ice cream, because this shit sucks. It sucks.
No, it's horrible. And, every week we keep using the word unprecedented. No one's ever dealt with this. And, my personal opinion is that you should be using this time to develop yourself, start something, do something. I mean, I think most people have some sort of a dream or a passion that they put off to the side. Maybe it's writing a blog, maybe it's writing a book, maybe they want to take up photography, whatever it is. And I think people have a lot of interests that we don't pursue because we're constantly going to work and just in that rat race and just making things happen. And I think now is the time to do that, personally. And that works for me, because I know if I didn't put my energy to this and just try to sit around, that's not going to be good for me. I'm going to be depressed and that's not positive for me. But that doesn't mean I haven't taken days where I don't do much, right? I initially I was trying to have this balance of, hey, do some work, but try to enjoy just not having to go to work, not having to get up and commute. And if that meant playing Call of Duty for 3 hours, that's what I did. Just to get you've got to start paying attention to your mind and knowing when you need that break. And if sitting around and binge watching your favorite show for a couple hours is going to kind of get you back level, make you feel good again, and then you can go back to work. So find that balance. But like I said, for me, I think I need to be working at something, and I've started a whole bunch of stuff. As you mentioned in the intro, I've focused on all these different brands and started the podcast. The podcast that wasn't even on my radar before any of this. I never even considered doing a podcast, but I think a lot of people had time throughout quarantine, and I was invited on, No Vacancy by you. And that's really where it all started. And a few
Great
other
episode, by the way.
Yeah, that was probably the most fun I've had in quarantine. That was a great time. But yeah, a lot of people have started, and I started to get invited to a few. And I was listening to someone's show. I think, no, it was No Vacancy. You guys, I forget the lady's name. I apologize. But she started her own PR company, and she was talking about brand management. And she said the most important thing you can do for yourself over the next 5 years to promote your brand is podcast. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks, because I have all these brands that I'm trying to promote. And I said, okay, well, there's another thing to do.
Right.
But how do I do this? And it works out because I'm doing it with my two friends. So I don't feel like it's just another thing I have to do. And I have a great producer as well. So
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes, you
it
do.
takes some of the work off. Yeah, in case you didn't know, it's oh, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. That way.
Yeah, so, yeah, and, it's been great, to kind of do that. But yeah, in a nutshell, I would say, listen, you really just got to get in tune with yourself, know what works for you. Walking has been a big thing for me too. It's a good way to kind of just put a end to the day, like as if you're at work. Get up early, work at 5 o'clock, just go for a walk. We just got outside and just went for a walk, came back. If you got to do a little more work, great. But it's find that balance and find the things that help you feel good.
So again, you've faced your fair share of setbacks through the different layoffs, through COVID. Obviously, as you're growing this company, I'm sure you faced rejections as you reached out to companies.
Hmm.
We talked to Sarah about this a little bit last or on the last episode,
Hmm.
and she talked a lot about branding, right? And we got
Yeah.
into the idea of personal branding, right? So
Mhm.
even if you're someone who's not looking to start a social media company, not starting to look to start a podcast or ask a TV or ask a concierge.tv, you're still looking just for a job, right? And you
Mhm.
have to sell yourself, and you are your personal brand. So
Mhm.
what would you kind of tell someone who is in that rat race of, I just want to get back to my sales job. I just want to get back to my front desk job. I just want to get back to my GM job. And you're throwing out application after application after application, all for jobs you're qualified for, maybe even for jobs that you're overqualified for.
Mhm.
But again, the talent pool is so vast right now that for whatever reason, you may not be getting these callbacks. And it just kind of seems like a continued punch to the face because it's a continued rejection, right?
Yeah.
It's almost impossible not to take that personally.
Yeah.
What
Yeah,
what
that's true.
would you tell a person who's been applying for maybe the last 5 months and has yet to even get a sniff of an interview,
Mhm.
to keep that positive mindset and to keep pushing forward when there's really just been nothing but rejection for the last 7 months?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I would say, you're not alone, right? I mean, and I hope that the bit of my story I told earlier gives somebody some hope that um you can bounce back, and you will bounce back as long as you want to, and as hard as you work at it. This is times that most of us are unemployed, right? So the fact that you haven't got a call back in 5 months is not because of you. Doesn't mean that you're unqualified for the job or whatever. They may have had every intention of hiring somebody, thinking that things would have turned around 3 months ago, and they haven't. So now they're not hiring anyone at all. No one knows where the end of this thing is. Um, but you've got to keep banging the door. One of the positions I got when I was struggling, I saw that this position was open. I applied the same day. I put on a suit and I walked to the hotel and just walked up to the front desk and asked if I could drop off my resume at HR. I did that, and they ended up calling me 2 days later. You're gonna have to really go out there. I mean, it's be hard to explain how difficult and how competitive the
Mhm.
workforce is going to be, and the landscape is going to be. So you're going to have to do things that you otherwise wouldn't have. You got to do a little bit more than the other guy. And you know what I would say, as far as to keep your confidence up and things like that, like, nobody is you, right? Nobody does things the way you do it. And I constantly remind myself of that. And we all have these moments where you feel like, well, what's the point? Somebody's done this. How many podcasts are there out there, right? I mean, why would they listen to mine? But nobody's me. Nobody has my experiences. Nobody has my sense of humor or the way I personally view things, because nobody is me. And you will find the people that are for you. So that's what I told myself. And those positions that are for you, and those jobs that you want, you're going to get them because they want you,
Mhm.
nobody else.
Mhm.
There's tons of people will have experience, but whatever it is that you bring to the table on an individual level are what they're going for. Because a big part of the jobs, is Dave mentioned earlier, is networking and things like that. The reason that works is because people got to like you. People
Yeah.
have to know who you are, right? And people have to want to work with you. You might have all the experience, but we've all worked with people who aren't fun to work with, right?
Mhm.
And now is a time where that not fun person, that not, that person that you don't really like in the office, this other individual now has the same experience, but you like them, you know them, they're friends of a friend, they network with people you network with. Who's
Yeah.
getting the job? So you will find your place, but you're gonna have to keep putting yourself out there as much as possible.
That's, I think, the epitome of this podcast.
Hmm.
What I'm trying to do is right there. Is that message right there? And you said the kind of the main words is you are not alone. Whatever position you're in, whether you're out of work for 7 months, whether you've been out of work, back to work, and out of work again, whether you've changed industries, whether you're working through this entire thing and you are just overwhelmed, overstressed, about to lose your mind because you're doing 15 different jobs and you're understaffed and all this stuff, you're not alone. There really is a wide community of people that are going through the same thing. And more than any industry I've been in, hospitality people come together and try to help each other
Absolutely.
out. And you can find someone to really talk to. Doesn't mean there's certainly those people out there that are not the best personality wise, but for the most part, the majority of the people I've dealt with have been kind hearted, caring people like
Hmm.
Calvin, who's, we met through COVID. We didn't really know each other prior to
Oh,
COVID. And
yeah.
we just started networking from being on the No Vacancy podcast. And we've just stayed in contact and we're working very closely together on a weekly basis at this point. So
Yeah.
I want to kind of leave it right there because I think that's a great message to leave on. But Calvin, give us a rundown on where we can find you, and I will sit here quietly for the next 20 minutes.
20 minutes. Yeah. It might take a few minutes for me to get through them, but I am Ref Problems. So Instagram at Ref Problems. I'm also on Facebook, but you guys are young. You don't use Facebook like that. Can also get me on Ref Par Travels, which has been a spin-off of the main page. Obviously, I'm a big travel guy working in the industry for so long. So that's where you can see all the places I've been and want to go to, and most importantly, things that I eat and drink, because it's turning into kind of a food blog too. But travel and food go together. RevPar growth. I hope I've given you guys a few nuggets here on this episode, but that's a place where we promote self development and growth, and it's a great account. So I think that is, I'd like to think we give you a lot of value there, and resume tips and things like that, all things to help you, especially during this kind of time. We've seen big growth on that account now because I think that we're delivering what people really need now, how to develop yourself, how to help you get out of this funk, and make yourself irreplaceable in the workplace, because I mean, I'm taking the advice. There's people who are still working. There's people who survived this, and they're there for a reason. So you want to, and one of those people is the people, the person behind the account. So you want to hear from people who are thriving in despite the situation.
Mhm.
And last but not least, the Midlife Crisis podcast is my latest venture. I think we're just published our 15th episode. Really excited. I do that with my two best friends, buddy of mine from high school and college, and that's just a place for me to just kind of be me. I say guy talk, but we talk about all kinds of stuff. So if you're female, definitely check it out, because you're going to hear what your boyfriend won't tell you.
Yeah, man, you're giving up our secrets, bro. I don't know if I could work for this podcast anymore. It's
Hey,
it's letting me, I'm putting me on blast a little bit, man.
Steve Harvey did it, and his book was pretty popular. So I'm sorry, but hey, I'm gonna have to take that.
I got you, man, and it's good to see the success it's had. It's really,
We have a lot of
obviously,
fun.
I get the messages and about the downloads and things like that, and it's
Yeah,
continuously been growing.
yeah.
So it's great to see. And for those of us who are listening on audio, Rev Parblems, it's RevParblems. So take Rev Par Lems, Rev Par Blems. That's how you can find it, or just find Calvin at any of the other accounts he mentioned. They're all tied together, so you'll get there.
Yeah, you'll
But it's a
get there
great account.
eventually.
So, Calvin, really appreciate your insight today. I really found this to be an inspiring conversation, and great to hear your story and how you've been able to really be successful through this and a new adventure that you want to do even prior to COVID. So thanks for coming and sharing some time and being my guest.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Cal. And I completely took off the end on that name, Calvin. But yeah, really another great episode and a lot of great content there. Again, the main takeaway I think is the whole point of this podcast is you're not alone. We're all going through this together. Hence why, like I say in the other episodes, this is an open forum. You know, I want anybody who wants to come tell their story to be my guest. So it's not just for my friends. It's not just for people I work with. It's not just for people I know or met through other people. You can join me if I've never talked to you, never heard of you a day in your life. I just want to hear your story because every time we tell a story, someone else may get something out of it. They may relate to it more. They may feel a little bit better. They may get a better understanding of themselves. So reach out to me on LinkedIn. My URL is linkedin.com/IN/D Mignano. That's DMIGNANO. Send me a message on Facebook. Let's connect. We'll get you on an episode. Have a lot of fun doing it. But in the meantime, thank you all for being my guest for another great episode. We will be back with some more real shortly. I have some great guests lined up, so I look forward to getting those stories out to you. Thanks a lot. Talk to you next time.